Sweet.
We are recording.
I love the way it's on.
So funny. Okay. According to the Pew Research Center, 77% of Democrats and 83% of Republicans believe that the other has few to no good ideas. With a show of hands, how many of you have fallen into one of these categories at least once? Because I know that I certainly have. It's pretty easy given how polarizing our political state has become. I have also seen nearly every family member fall into one of these categories at one point or another. I have had a front row seat to political discrimination throughout my entire life while growing up in both a Republican and Democratic household. I witnessed the breakdown of political communication between my brother, my mother, as well as our extended family members. It got to the point where I even had to ban certain words in our household to salvage the relationship between my mother and I. I initially wanted to use senior year as an opportunity to research more about why these political conversations were so impossible to have in my household. And through my initial research, I eventually landed on the question, what are the main influencing factors behind the American political divide, and how does this influence our democracy? Hello, my name is Amelia O'Toole, and thank you for coming to my senior TED Talk. I started the exploration of my research question by first looking into totally lost my train of thought. By first looking into the development of our party system and how we came to be a democratic society. I was shocked to discover that the political parties were not even a part of our initial political structure, but rather that they were developed later, after the fact. I was also shocked to discover that there was so much controversy in deciding the way in which the president would be elected that they had to give it to an unnamed committee. I couldn't find the name of this committee to determine how we would vote for the president. And so the Electoral College system was born. The main influencing of its instatement was due to the geographical discrimination at the time. The geographical discrimination was basically a preference for rural voters over the urban city counterparts. This is due to the perception that rural voters were more godly and cleaner, whereas their city counterparts were dirty and ungodly. This was unpopular at the time, and this meant that the rural voters had up to 400 times more geographical voting power initially compared to certain California counterparts. It was this public dissatisfaction that originally started the party system. Their purpose being to monopolize votes, skewing the election back in the favor of whichever candidate they preferred. The first to develop was the Republican Party, and later, to oppose the Republican and bring power back was the Democratic. During this time, the Democratic was representative of the South, something I had originally not realized and was shocked to discover. This has clearly changed over time, whereas now the South is more represented by Republicans. It was this state in my research that I was able to deduce three important concepts. One, that the parties were developed in opposition of one another. Two, that they changed their strategies and rhetoric to contest each other. And three, that the parties are not as set in stone as I had previously believed, but that they are more fluid. I found this concept of political fluidity rather fascinating. And through my research, saw a decrease in the fluid nature start in 1964 with Oklahoma, who, as you can see right here, has not been Democratic since this election. This is also true of Minnesota, who hasn't voted Republican since 1972. During this time, I was also encouraged to look into media bias and was happy to find that they had a connection. Through my research into media bias, I discovered that the turning point for media and politics was 1961 with John Fitzgerald Kennedy. This was just before the 1964 election, which began the pattern of stagnation for our country's political system. John F. Kennedy perpetuated this change through the large amount of media used in his advertising of his campaign, as well as after the fact. Utilizing his campaign, as expressed by Dupain Ghosh Fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School, a co-director of the Digital Platform and Democracy Project, the candidate was charismatic, and his campaign was intelligent in how it exploited the medium. The television did not merely amplify his characteristics, it markedly changed the tactics necessary to prevail in an election. This set the precedent for the future elections. They began to rely heavily on the widespread awareness that media could provide, and in turn, media began to rely heavily on the views that it was able to consume due to its political programming. The development of the media's influence on electoral candidates leads to a large push to appear morally superior than the candidate that they are running against. This manipulation of opposing parties' characteristics breeds mistrust, which furthers the gap between the Republican and Democratic parties, causing them each to view the other as being more and more radicalized, which ultimately radicalize themselves in the pursuit of defending their ideas. Media also has the downside of broadcasting this division and misrepresentation on a larger scale, getting this skewed perspective of different political candidates out to a larger audience. These two factors combined are the initial cause and catalyst for the political divide that we are seeing today. It is a state of unbelievable political division and decay. And it was at this point that I began to wonder what this meant for the future of our democratic system. I began to research what happens to failing political systems, specifically failing democracies. And I came across some recently found information on a newly classified government style known as a technocratic-led government. It is stated to be a mirror of democracy, since they function much like a regular democracy. However, it is thought to be a more biased and unstable system of democracy. It is a political state that most failing democracies enter, although I could not find a specific reason other than the fact that they are considered mirrors of each other of why so many democracies fall under the umbrella of a technocratic-led system. This government style also, more than likely, will develop into a caretaker-style government. A caretaker-style government is a temporary form of government meant to reestablish government control. While in a caretaker state, no permanent legislation can be passed. It is purely meant to restabilize a previously fallen system. This government style was seen in both Greece and Italy during their respective political and economic collapses. And unfortunately, technocratic-led governments are often accompanied by tragedy due to their biased and unstable natures. This is why they so often fall into a caretaker government upon establishment. It was in the hopes of avoiding such a governing system that I decided to approach the action project the way that I did. I wanted to spread some sort of positive political media, whereas there is so much negative going around that has perpetuated the divide in our country. This is why I chose to present my action project in the form of a video. And I'm going to play a little bit of that, if that's okay with you guys. I'm just going to step up here. And...
I think if you push the over arrow, it will play it.
Oh, okay. Oh. There's a couple parts.
When humans act with cruelty, we characterize them as animals. Yet the only animal that displays cruelty is humanity. Anthony Douglas Williams. I became painfully aware of this during the political conflicts that took place during 2020. In this day and age of political unrest, the United States has reached an all-time high in their political division, political discrimination, media bias, and a lack of communication between the parties. This has not only allowed but fueled the separation between the parties. However, we are more than our associated parties, something that is often forgotten in the midst of our strong emotional connections to the different political movements presented by each. We are all human, and as humans, there are many things that set us apart from other animals. Our mastery of language in all forms, the ability to use fire, agriculture, and our ability to come together in large-scale cooperation. These are objective things that set us apart from other species, making us human.
Okay. I just wanted to show that little clip. This I felt was a good representation of the main argument that I was trying to reach behind my video, which was to kind of target and emphasize the pieces of our lives that make us all the same. The fact that we are all human is an undeniable fact that makes us, as a species, able to come together. My main target for this video was to be an inspirational form of kind of education to get people aware of the political divide and inspired to do something about it. Later in the video, I talk about the importance of bipartisan communication between the parties, which is emphasized through what is referred to as LRCs, or living room conversations. This is a type of communication that involves taking two couples and sitting them down in a living room type environment and having them discuss different political issues without the intention of influencing or manipulating the others in any way, but rather of developing mutual party respect and understanding behind different political issues. And while I was proud of my video, I was fairly disappointed in our exhibition due to the mix-up between our YouTube channels. That would be the main thing that I would want to change throughout this year, was to be able to broadcast this to more people. As of right now, the video has reached 75 different individuals from the last time that I checked, which was more than I was expecting because of the mix-up. And while that may seem like a small number, I'm pretty proud of it, honestly. It's more people than I would talk to in an in-person exhibition, as well as if they choose to go through the process of doing an LRC, or living room conversation. It has the potential to reach up to 300 people. And for me, that's pretty amazing, since those people can then go on to influence other people and continue to have conversation. I think it's a small drop in a way of getting information out there and just inspiring us to come together and ignore our political biases and be able to talk about our politics in a more open and understanding way. That is why I chose to format the video the way that I did. I used a poetic start and finish to the video, which I'm sure you saw in the beginning, and an expositionary in the middle, which is more research heavy, focused on voiceover and connecting arguments. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And we're excited. Let's see. We're excited. And I hope that you all will get out there and talk about politics.
All right, panel. Now it is time for our Q&A section of the